My name is Catherine Foster, 38, and I've spent the last 6 years building Foster Tech, a software company that's now valued at $4.2 million. 12 employees depend on me, not just for paychecks, but for the structure and vision that keeps this company alive. I eat, sleep, and breathe this business, and I've done it from scratch, starting in my tiny apartment with a laptop, ramen, and a relentless refusal to give up. Stephen, my husband, walked into our dining room that night with a look I didn't recognize, part urgency, part righteous indignation. I glanced up from my plate, spoon poised over roasted vegetables, sensing the tension before he even spoke. "Catherine," he began, voice calm but firm, "you need to sell your company. My sister needs $1 million to start her business." I froze mid-bite. The fork rattled against my plate. My mind went through 6 years of spreadsheets, contracts, payroll, investor calls. My company, my life's work. "Excuse me?" I said, carefully keeping my voice measured. "She has an incredible opportunity," Stephen continued. "A consulting firm, marketing, brand development. She's been networking, lined up potential clients. You can afford it. You should help." I blinked. The words felt surreal, almost cinematic in their audacity. "Stephen, you're asking me to liquidate a business I've spent 6 years building. Do you understand what that entails? I don't have $1 million in cash lying around. And even if I did, this is not an investment. It's a gamble with my company's future." His expression hardened. "So you won't even consider it?" "I considered it, and I'm saying no," I replied, my voice sharpening. "Then you need to sell the company or take out a loan. She deserves this chance," he said, leaning forward like the universe itself justified his demands. I put down my fork, swallowed hard, and felt the first simmering heat of frustration and disbelief. This wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. "Stephen, a loan against my company isn't feasible. Selling it? That's not just financial impracticality. That's destroying the life I've built. You're asking me to gamble 6 years of sweat, risk, and late nights for a business that has no proven track record." He shook his head, exhaling slowly. "I'm just trying to do what's right for family." I could feel my chest tighten. Family doesn't demand destruction. Family supports. This isn't about love. It's about entitlement. My thoughts raced. Do I call my lawyer? Yes. I need clarity. I need protection. I reached for my phone. "I'll call Veronica," I said. "Why do you need a lawyer for this?" he asked, incredulous. "Because you just asked me to liquidate my life's work for your sister," I said, each word deliberate. "I want to understand my options." I dialed Veronica and put her on speaker. Her calm, precise voice filled the room. "Catherine, what's going on?" "Stephen's asking me to sell the company to fund his sister's startup. What are my legal protections?" "Your company is legally yours," Veronica said immediately. "But if she argues that marital assets were involved in the growth of the business, or that you benefited from marital support, there could be a claim during divorce proceedings. We should discuss asset protection strategies, just to be safe." I hung up and looked at Stephen. His face had gone hard, his jaw tight. Rage simmered there, almost palpable. "You just humiliated me," he said, voice low. "You asked me to support my sister, and instead you, what, call your lawyer?" "I'm protecting my business," I replied, feeling a strange mix of anger and sorrow. "I'm not gambling with the livelihoods of my employees or with the future I've built." He stood abruptly, storming out of the dining room. The bedroom door slammed, a sharp punctuation to a conversation that had gone too far too fast. I sat there alone, fork abandoned, heart racing. 4 days passed like a slow-motion car crash. I met with Veronica at her office the next morning. Legal papers spread across the table, each document a small fortress against potential claims. "Restructure the company into an irrevocable trust," Veronica said. "You'll be the trustee and the sole beneficiary. It will own the company, and Stephen will have no claim." My stomach nodded. "Retroactive?" "Yes, based on the company formation documents before the marriage. It's $8,500 in legal fees, but it's bulletproof." I nodded, a tight smile on my face. Protection completed, at a price that felt both painful and necessary. This was war, and I was finally ready to fight. The morning after I finalized the trust, I walked into Foster Tech and felt a rare sense of calm. My office smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, sunlight streaking across the polished desks where 12 lives depended on me. For 6 years, I had carried the weight of every payroll, every client contract, every late-night bug fix. And now, legally, my company was untouchable. But peace was fragile. Stephen's silence after our dinner confrontation lasted only 2 days. Then, like a storm gathering force, he returned. Not alone, but with reinforcements. I opened the door one Thursday evening to find his sister Cassandra and his parents, Richard and Marianne, sitting stiffly in my living room. The room felt smaller somehow, their eyes heavy with unspoken judgment. "What's this?" I asked, masking my irritation with civility. Marianne spoke first, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk about Cassandra's opportunity." I took a deep breath. "No, I'm not talking about it." Richard leaned forward. "Catherine, she's family. Your husband says you're being difficult about helping her get started." Cassandra, 33, looked almost apologetic, but her eyes sparkled with determination. "I've done my research. The market is there. I just need capital." I felt my chest tighten. "Then get a business loan. Banks won't lend to someone with no collateral, no proven track record. You know that." "You're going to take my money instead," she said, voice rising. "No, I'm not. I've spent 6 years building this company. You've spent 6 years avoiding responsibility. That's the difference." Stephen's parents tried another approach, invoking family duty, appealing to loyalty. But each word felt like a hammer striking my resolve. Family does not mean sacrificing everything you've built for someone else's dream. Finally, I stood. "This meeting is over. Everyone needs to leave." Cassandra's lips pressed into a thin line. "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. She was welcome to remember me, however she chose. I wasn't going to destroy myself to make someone else's fantasy come true. The next morning, Stephen tried a subtler approach. He sat across from me at breakfast. Calm, almost reasonable. "What if we compromise?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Not the full million. Half. 500,000. My jaw tightened. "There's nothing to compromise. A legitimate business plan doesn't justify liquidating assets that support 12 employees and a growing company. $500,000 won't make a difference to her success, and it could destroy mine." He flinched, clearly frustrated by my refusal. "You're destroying this family," he said. I let the words hang in the air. "No, I'm protecting what I've built. Not the same thing." He left, slamming the door behind him. His absence left a quiet, suffocating tension. For the first time, I realized how far this conflict would go, that protecting my company could very well cost me my marriage. Late that afternoon, I received a call from Leo, my business partner. His voice was tight. "Catherine, did you know Stephen's been contacting our clients?" My stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "He's telling them you're unstable, that the company might be at risk. I just got off the phone with Mrs. Patterson, our biggest client. She's concerned." I closed my eyes. "How many clients?" "3, Leo said. All with the same story." I grabbed my laptop. Within an hour, I drafted a professional email to all clients, clear, factual, and devoid of emotion. The message was simple. Any claims about instability were false, and our company remained strong. Then I called Veronica. "Options for client interference? Cease and desist letters. Potential lawsuit for damages. Document everything," she replied. Within the day, the letters were sent. Stephen received them at his parents' house, and true to form, called me screaming an hour later. "You sent me a legal threat. You tried to sabotage my sister." I stayed calm. "I'm not sabotaging anyone. I'm protecting my business from interference. This isn't personal. It's professional. And legally, I cannot access company assets for personal use without breaching fiduciary duty. You asked me to destroy my company. I said no." Silence fell on the line, and in that silence, I realized something vital. The war had begun, and I was prepared. The office felt tense the next morning, though I tried to project calm. My employees sensed the storm I couldn't hide. Foster Tech had always been a sanctuary of logic, schedules, and solutions. Now it felt like a minefield. Jenny, my receptionist, came rushing into my office, phone in hand, eyes wide. "Catherine, your sister-in-law is here. She's asking to see you. She won't leave." I closed my laptop and exhaled slowly. "Tell her I'm unavailable." "She says she needs to talk about family loyalty, and she's bringing her parents with her." Great, just what I needed. I grabbed my coat, walking toward the lobby with the weight of 6 years of work pressing on me. There they were, Cassandra, Richard, and Marianne, standing as if the living room confrontation had been too formal, and now the battlefield had expanded into my professional domain. "What is this?" I asked, voice tight but civil. Cassandra stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "I've come to speak to you about the opportunity you're denying me." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Opportunity? You mean the chance to gamble with my company. Cassandra, your opportunity does not justify trespassing into my office or harassing my staff. I will not fund your startup. Richard tried the paternal approach, the old think about family line. Marianne chimed in, invoking loyalty and fairness. I cut them off. You're not just asking, you're demanding, you're interfering, and you're trying to manipulate my business for personal gain. That stops now. Cassandra's voice rose. I just want what's rightfully mine. You're being selfish. I felt a cold surge of clarity. This isn't about money. This is about control, about entitlement, about punishing me for saying no. I raised my hand. This meeting is over. Leave my office now. She didn't budge. I called the police. Within 15 minutes, 2 officers arrived. I explained the situation, trespassing, harassment, and they escorted Cassandra out. She shouted something about family and betrayal as she left, but her words were meaningless. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, followed quickly by exhaustion. Back in my office, I called Veronica. We need a restraining order, now. 2 days later, it was granted. Cassandra could not come within 500 feet of me or my business, and when she violated it once, showing up near the building, she spent a weekend in jail. But the personal attacks didn't stop there. Word had spread. Richard and Marianne had launched a campaign behind the scenes, contacting friends, clients, even distant relatives, painting me as controlling and financially abusive. My mother called, concerned. I explained everything, the $1 million demand, the interference, the trust structure, and she, wise and calm, reassured me. Catherine, you did the right thing. You're protecting your life's work. You're not the villain here. Even so, the emotional toll weighed heavily. Stephen had demanded I choose between my marriage and my company. He had chosen his sister's fantasies over our partnership, and now, months later, the reality was unavoidable. The conflict had splintered the family, my marriage, and nearly the business I'd fought to protect. The turning point came when I learned that the first divorce papers had arrived. Stephen, infuriated by my refusal to liquidate assets, had taken the predictable step. His demands were insane. 50% of the business, spousal support, legal fees, all attempts to break the prenup. But the prenup and the trust structure held firm. Everything I had done to protect FosterTech, every meeting with Veronica, every legal precaution, had created a fortress around my company. I would not be forced to trade my life's work for someone else's entitlement. As the legal process moved forward, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. I was doing the right thing, legally, ethically, financially, but at a steep personal cost. My marriage was over. My husband, once my partner in life and ambition, was now a reminder that loyalty is conditional and love can be fragile when money and power enter the picture. And yet, there was a strange satisfaction in knowing that the people who truly mattered, my employees, my clients, and my mother, understood the truth. They understood that I had not failed. I had protected what I had built. Sitting in my office that evening, alone, I stared at the framed $100 bill I had sent to Cassandra as a token. A gesture of minimal goodwill, enough for her first business cards, nothing more. She had returned it torn, with a note declaring she didn't need my charity. I taped it back together and placed it on my wall. It was more than a reminder of her entitlement. It was a monument to restraint, strategy, and survival. Sometimes the smartest move isn't giving, but saying no. And in that moment, I knew that, despite the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the chaos, I had won the war that mattered most, safeguarding my company, my employees, and my life's work. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and stale coffee, a subtle reminder that life often felt procedural and impersonal, even when everything else was chaos. I walked in, filing clutched tight, heart steady. Today we were finalizing the divorce. Stephen sat across from me, a figure I barely recognized anymore, his eyes wary, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. His lawyer, young and nervous, shuffled papers nervously. Veronica was by my side, calm, composed, the anchor I needed in the storm. She had organized every document, the trust papers, the prenup, proof of attempted interference, client correspondence, creating a fortress of evidence that made my case unassailable. The judge looked over the documents, then at Stephen's lawyer. "Counselor, your argument?" He stumbled, fumbling with papers. Your Honor, my client claims the business increased in value during the marriage due to his wife's contributions, emotional support, guidance. I felt a small, vindicated smile tug at my lips. Veronica didn't even blink. Emotional support is a marital duty, the judge said flatly. It does not constitute a legal contribution to the business. The prenup stands. The company and all related assets remain with the wife. Stephen's eyes widened. I felt neither triumph nor glee, just relief, a quiet, hard-won peace. Temporary spousal support was set at $2,000 per month for 3.5 years, far less than he had demanded. His lawyer tried to argue for more, but the judge shut it down. I worked full-time, I had my own earnings, and I was capable of sustaining myself. Fair and simple. Outside the courtroom, Stephen confronted me, voice low. You planned all of this. I protected my company, I said simply. You wanted me to destroy 6 years of work. That's on you. He didn't respond, and I let him walk away. I felt the weight lift, even as the emotional sting lingered. 4 years of marriage, gone in 15 minutes. But the destruction he tried to impose on my life hadn't succeeded. Foster Tech was intact. My employees were secure. My clients remained confident. Weeks later, the fallout continued in small, strange ways. Cassandra had moved back in with her parents. Her so-called opportunity had collapsed. Her calls and emails ceased. Occasionally, she'd text, vague, angry, full of blame, but I ignored them. I had no energy to chase entitlement. Stephen's parents, once persistent, had stopped contacting me. Their silence was a relief, though it felt hollow. My own family remained a constant source of support, offering perspective and validation, a reminder that I hadn't been alone. And then there was the $100 bill, the one I had mailed to Cassandra for her first business cards, a gesture of minimal, controlled kindness. She had returned it torn, declaring she didn't need charity. I had taped it back together, framed it, and placed it in my office. It wasn't just money, it was a monument to restraint, strategy, and the discipline of protecting what truly mattered. The business flourished. In the months after the divorce, we landed 2 major clients, revenues increased by 18%, and the employee bonus pool got a much-needed boost. Those who had earned it shared in the success. Cassandra earned nothing. Stephen's attempts to manipulate or intimidate had failed. And me? I was free. Not free from heartbreak, not free from the memories, but free to focus on what I had built, on who I had become. Sitting in my office late one evening, I looked at the framed $100 bill, a small, quiet smile on my face. Some people want handouts, some want to build. I had chosen to build, and nothing, no threats, no demands, no familial pressure would ever take that from me again. Months had passed since the final hearing. The dust had settled, leaving behind a quieter, cleaner life. Foster Tech thrived as if unshaken, but I knew better. I had been tested, and I had survived. Walking through the office, seeing my team collaborating, hearing laughter amidst the hum of productivity, I felt a sense of pride that no money, no family dispute, no betrayal could diminish. The $100 bill still hung on my office wall, taped back together, a reminder that restraint could be more powerful than any windfall. It was a symbol of foresight, discipline, and measured generosity, the kind that didn't come at the cost of everything I had built. Every time I glanced at it, I remembered Cassandra's entitlement, Stephen's demands, and the calculated chaos they had tried to impose on my life. And I reminded myself, with quiet satisfaction, that saying no had been the right choice. Life outside the office also had rhythm. I focused on building, not reacting. I nurtured my relationships with colleagues, mentored my employees, and finally allowed myself to embrace the stability I had fought for. Stephen had moved on, his life intertwined now with family loyalty over logic. Cassandra had returned to reality, working at a call center, facing the consequences of her inexperience. And me? I ran my company with clarity, purpose, and control. Even the legal battles had their lessons. The prenup and the trust had not only protected my financial assets, but had safeguarded my mental and emotional health. I had learned, the hard way, that foresight, preparation, and boundaries weren't just business tools, they were survival tools. Occasionally, updates trickled in through mutual acquaintances. Cassandra had attempted to revive her consulting dream online, but without a client base or real experience, it floundered. Stephen's parents remained distant, a subtle acknowledgement that the lines of loyalty had been redrawn. My family remained steadfast, a constant reminder that true support comes from those who respect your work, your boundaries, and your decisions. I had regrets, yes. Divorce had hurt, the personal cost, the breakdown of trust, the loss of shared memories. But I had no regrets about my business, my employees, or my principles. Every decision had been deliberate, measured, and aligned with the life I wanted to protect. Sitting at my desk one evening, I looked out over the city skyline, lights twinkling like stars. I thought about the lessons learned, that loyalty without reason is dangerous, that family can be both supportive and destructive, and that the hardest choices are often the right ones. And the $100 bill, now framed and intact, seemed almost poetic, a small token that represented much more than money. It represented wisdom, discipline, and the quiet power of saying no. Some people want handouts, some want to build. I had built, and I would continue to build. That, above all, was my victory. Foster Tech continued to grow. Revenue climbed steadily. Employees thrived. And I slept at night, knowing I had protected not just a business, but a legacy, one that would support 12 families and countless dreams, all because I chose to stand firm when it mattered most. It wasn't the life I expected, but it was the life I had earned. And finally, after the storm of betrayal, anger, and entitlement, I felt free.